206 players started the FIDE World Cup knockout tournament on the 1st of November. That seems like a very long time ago. And finally, the final match, the tiebreak in the final, was decided on the 26th of November. So the two finalists were Yi from China and Javahir Sindarov from Uzbekistan. Of course, we saw what happened in the third place playoff, so Yesipenko won that, and so we know that those final three will qualify for the candidates. But who would win first prize? So that's what we're going to look at now. The tiebreak for the final of the FIDE World Cup. Let's take a look. The two classical games between Sindarov and Wei Yi were drawn. It seemed like neither player had the energy to push with, in such a long game. So, tiebreaks. First two games, 15 minutes plus 10 seconds per move. Now, this is the first game, Sindarov playing white. Now, it was a pretty dry game, lots of exchanges, but obviously white has a little bit more ground with the king here and the pawn here, and white is pressing. But black should be okay here. But Wei Yi made a mistake. He played g5. And the game went h5. And, well, the king is coming forward, but it's not possible for white's king to break through here. For example, here, well, this is the game continuation actually, and white's king is shut out. And the game finished like this. Now you just got to step back very carefully. Don't go to f7 because then king f5 will win. If the king comes here, king g6. And if it comes here, then king e6. But instead you play king e7 and you shut out white's king. Sorry, let me just show that. If king f5, then king f7. And so king e3, you just have to tread carefully with the king. And they agree to draw in this position. However, let's come back here, because after g5, this is actually a mistake. In fact, bishop f7, black is still fine. But g5 was actually a mistake. Sindarov could have played bishop e4. Now I find this absolutely fascinating. It's the kind of endgame I really enjoy looking at. So what's the difference? Well, after bishop takes, king e6. So the white king obviously wants to come in here. King e6. Here is the key move, h5. So this pawn on h6 is now a target. Now if the king drops back, you'll notice a similarity with the previous variation with the game. Here white has a tempo move. You can play g3, and now the king has to step to the side. So king g7, king e6 forces the win of this pawn. Very simple. And if f5 check, king d4, so king d6 blocks out the king for the moment. But g3 puts black in Zugzwang. If black could just pass here, black could decline to make a move, then black would be fine. But basically the king has to give ground. By the way, if one of these pawns moves, then white exchanges and then just brings the king across. So why is this winning? Well, king e6, king c5, king has to come back, and then king d5, and the king makes its way in. Okay, so king c6, here's the crucial variation. And you get to h6. Now, both sides make a queen, but with two extra pawns, of course, that is going to be winning for white. Okay, what about another variation? Well, it's a bit closer if black plays bishop c6. I mean, there are other variations there, but you get the idea. It's the tempo move with the g-pawn, which is really important. That wasn't there in the game. So h5. So the bishop can't escape, otherwise the b-pawn is taken. So king c7. Yeah, I mean, moves like this, obviously, that's not going to be very good. So king c7 takes. Now this is a bit closer. In this case, the king has to rush to h6, and you can see that black is actually queening first. So it's important to put the king here, so there aren't very good checks in this position. This should be winning for white. With the king and the queen at this end of the board, these pawns are going to drop, and of course the king is exposed, so there's always going to be some nice check for white to pick up the pawn. So that should be winning. Still got to get there, but anyway, bishop e4 is the best try, and yeah, objectively should be winning advantage for white, but yeah, that was missed by Sindarov. I mean, this involves a lot of calculation. I mean, he spent 3 minutes over h5. It's a tough one. When you're short of time, okay, he obviously didn't want to risk it and thought that, well, he should have decent winning chances after this move, but strong defense from Wei Yi. So, first game drawn. So they went into the second game with this time Wei Yi playing white. So again, 15 minutes plus 10 seconds per move. And this was a very, very tense game with queens and rooks on right till the very end. So very orthodox start, and interesting that Sindarov doesn't play bishop c5, but instead plays the more modest bishop e7. I mean, that's super solid. a4, that makes room for the bishop to drop back, otherwise knight a5 would claim that bishop, very important piece. Now, I mean, bishop e6 is a common move here to block out that bishop. But then knight d5 actually is quite common. Bishop g4, also a fairly common move. I mean, this has been played by some very strong players, but it doesn't appeal to me to give up the two bishops, but it's completely playable. Basically because this knight reaches an excellent square on e6 where it controls, these squares. But yeah, I instinctively, I really like white's position now. Although, the computer says that this is just a slight advantage to white, but I would be very happy with that bishop. Funny enough, Sindarov has actually played this position with white, and his opponent played rook d8. But so Sindarov with black knows this position very well, and he played b6 instead of rook d8, which his opponent played before. So I suppose this is designed against a5. I mean, this could still be played, but I mean, it's possible to take it, but perhaps he'd just play b5 here. Seems pretty sound. Doesn't break up the pawns. Anyway, Wei Yi played queen f3. Doesn't look bad, activating the queen and starting initiative on the king side, which looks really sound to me. Nice maneuver. I really like this from Wei Yi, actually. So he's been able to put some pressure on the knight on e6, and the h-pawn gains some ground on the king side. And now Wei Yi just took on e6. So I guess he was thinking that d5 is going to come. So he may as well do something about this and damage black's pawns. I mean, you certainly don't have to take on e6, but it does give white in some ways a concrete positional advantage in that this damages black's pawn structure. How bad this is a moot point. It's possible just to go into an endgame here, and I think this is a very interesting moment. This is completely playable for black, but perhaps Sindarov thought that it would just be very difficult to get any kind of winning chances here. White is for choice here, definitely, just because this is a long-term weakness, if white ever breaks through. So Sindarov played pawn takes, so keeping the queens on just means there's more tension, and black does have counter chances here associated with d5, and as we're going to see, an advance on the queen side. So that pawn does a good job of controlling the f5 square, so preventing that knight reaching the outpost, which is so often white's idea in these kind of gioco piano Spanish positions. So what Wei Yi is doing is building up pressure on e5, and he wants black to make a decision to either take here or advance, and then he'll have more options. Then he can decide what to do on the king side. So there we go, bishop c3. So you can see there's pressure behind that pawn on e4, on the pawn on e5. So Sindarov decides to play d4. In fact, there was a very interesting opportunity here to play knight h7 to g5 and to claim the initiative. This probably would have been quite good, but anyway, in rapid play chess, such moments just pass very quickly. And Sindarov basically has found a plan. He's advancing on the queen side. So tension has released in the center, but Sindarov has this very nice space advantage. Very hard for white to get counterplay with f4 when black's pieces are lined up like this. So yeah, when you see a straightforward plan, you go for it. So very much like the King's Indian, actually, with colours reversed, of course. Black is using the space to gain some territory on the queen side, and that's dangerous. Okay, Wei Yi fighting back. That means that if black does play b5, then there's potential for counterplay. So Sindarov has to organise things carefully. So notice he's overprotecting e6. The queen on e8 attacks this one, so the knight comes back. Queen c8. And now he goes for b5. So in general, this is a good thing to advance on the queen side. Good thing for black. But of course, black has to be very careful about a rook invading. But you can see that with the rook here and the queen here, that Sindarov has covered the kind of crucial entry points for the rook. Knight g4. Well, getting rid of that knight means it's going to be easier for the queen to operate on the king side. So c3, exchange of knights, and bishop e1. What you can see at the moment, that bishop certainly isn't doing very much. And with this nice pawn chain, then c2 is potentially a target. So it's restricted the bishop and yeah, creates target here. Rook f7. So this queen placement on c8 was very careful, very clever. The e-pawn is protected, and that means that the rook is free to move to the queen side. f3, necessary of course to give the bishop some air. And now Sindarov takes control on the queen side. So this is of course absolutely typical when you advance. So this is under pressure. But actually white can rearrange, so it's not such a big deal. And queen g4, white always has pressure here. queen e8 prevents the queen coming into g6. King steps up off the back rank, and g3. So Sindarov has achieved seemingly quite a lot by tying the rooks to the defence of the pawn on c2. But, well, what next for black? This is the problem. And actually, the initiative could very easily turn in white's favour, because that rook on f2 still guards the pawn on c2, but you can start to push with f4. So black has to be careful here. King g2. So that's a kind of typical rapid play move. You know, you step out of the line of the bishop. Sensible. Now rook b8. So Sindarov is aware that f4 is coming, and you know, he's starting to think about that. Could have played g5 and exchanged off queens. That's a safer way to play, I would say. But instead he went for rook b8 and rook b7. This is almost tempting Wei Yi to sort of make a break on the king side. So this is very daring. He could have played, here's a clever move, rook b5, so that after f4 you'll notice the h-pawn would be en prise. And then, well, it's hard, I would say, for either side to make progress. Anyway, rook b7, f4. Well, at this point, well, this looked really dangerous for black. E takes f4. Now Wei Yi went for e5. Could just recapture. And if rook b2, then rook f2. Everything's protected. I mean, I would prefer white there. But yeah, it's very unclear, because white's king is starting to open up as well. But e5 played. Bishop c5. Rook f4, queen e8, and the rook came across to f2. So at the moment, these entry points are covered by rook and bishop. g6 is covered by the queen. So Sindarov is okay for the moment. Rook a1. And he's starting to think about a counterattack. Interesting. Watch out for a potential check on this diagonal. Watch out for the rook coming down. But it's a very delicate balance. Queen f3. Nice move. Guarding the diagonal and perhaps looking to play queen e4 check. Rook b1. Wow, this is getting scary now, with the potential to hassle the king. Check. And g4 just makes a little bit of room for the king to step up. Rook h1. Okay, hits the bishop and makes room for the second rook. King g3, so that means the rook can interpose, and of course this is guarded. Rook e1. Now the queen doesn't want to move away, because then that's going to win a piece. The king is going to have to let go of the bishop. So after this move, rook e1, rook e2 played. An exchange. So, well, that attacking wave has been parried by Wei Yi. And his pieces look pretty active. And black's, well, they're kind of scattered. So it's still really double-edged. This move I like from Sindarov. So in exchanging, he gets rid of that potentially powerful attacking piece. And it means the queen has entry into the position. And at this point, Wei Yi cracked. He can still draw this. Now, it's a beautiful, I think very instructive way to draw. Of course, I'm not suggesting you should have seen this. When you're short of time, you know, by this point, you're playing on instinct. You don't have time to calculate. And Wei Yi took on d4. But let me show you this draw. It's actually beautiful. It's really beautiful. After king g2, attacking the rook. Well, if the rook moves away, fine. White should be okay. Okay, what about queen h4? Well, that's troubling. And here's how you draw. Rook f8. Fantastic. And after this, in fact, it's perpetual check. I mean, black's queen can interpose at some point, but then the rook would be en prise. So here, the king cannot escape if it comes to h7, queen e4. Fantastic idea, but how are we going to spot rook f8 and calculate all the details of that when you've just got no time? Wei Yi took on d4, and now the queen and rook closed in. Rook e1, good move, so that prevents any check on e4. And in this position, Wei Yi resigned. Why did he resign? Well, if the king moves, then queen takes rook. That's not bad. And if queen f3, then rook g1 check wins the queen. I think we'll leave it in the final position. There we go. Sindarov, Javakhir Sindarov from Uzbekistan is the winner of the FIDE World Cup Knockout Tournament 2025. Really impressive achievement, and he's been making great strides over the last few years, and it's a continuing success story for Uzbek chess. Of course, we have Noribek Abdusatorov, who at the age of 17 in 2021 won the World Rapid Play Championship, and he's established himself at the top of the chess world. I mean, he's an extraordinary talent. And of course, in 2022, the Uzbekistan chess team won the gold medals at the Olympiad. And Sindarov is the latest to break through, and he's up to number 22 in the world, just 19 years old. He had a superb World Cup, and I think what was impressive about his play was that he had this fighting spirit, this will to win and to survive in any position. He played a lot of long endgames, for example. He defeated Petrov from Russia in the first round. He defeated Theodoru from Greece in the next round. He defeated Yu Yang-yi. Frederick Svana, that was a superb endgame. And then he played against Jose Martinez. Very tough. He went through the tiebreaks to defeat him, and that was a really tough one. Then he defeated his compatriot Noribek Yakubayev, and then Wei Yi in the final. So he really had to fight very hard, but often long endgames. And well, yesterday I was commentating at the London Chess Classic, the first round, and Noribek Abdusatorov was playing. Excuse me a moment. And he noted Sindarov's will to win that really brought him the points in this World Cup. Very impressive indeed. So we look forward to the candidates tournament. What I'm excited about in this candidates tournament is that we have representatives of a younger generation. So Sindarov, 19 years old. Yesipenko, he's, let me see, 20... hang on, let me just check. Can't see it. 23 years old, I think. I did know yesterday, and now, of course, I've forgotten. That's my sieve of a memory. do you know what? I'm just going to confirm that because that's bothering me now. Yesipenko is indeed 23 years old. Okay, I wasn't wrong. And Wei Yi, 26 years old. And I feel like for Wei Yi, a prodigy, and he's sort of making a comeback after his prodigy years when he broke through. But he devoted time to his studies, so it's like his time is overdue. So yeah, we have a new generation coming through, which is incredibly good to see, and it's going to make the candidates in the spring of 2026 very exciting. Hope you've enjoyed my coverage of the World Cup. There's lots more coming up on the channel. As I just mentioned, I'm commentating at the moment at the London Chess Classic, so you can find me live on YouTube later on today. And yeah, hopefully I'll find a little bit of time to look at some games from there as well. So if you enjoyed my coverage, if you want to support the channel, then do check out patreon.com/PowerPlayChess. And for a monthly subscription of $25, you get lots of extra material. You get a live masterclass every month. So do check that out. Thanks for watching.